All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming out. Good to see you. This is the Getting My Drum Corps Performance Ready webinar. So I appreciate you guys coming. It's my first webinar, so it's a little bit of a learning curve for me. I love trying new things, so I appreciate you guys coming. We're going to get started right into it. A couple real quick things. Make sure you, any questions, discussion points, drop them in the chat. I will monitor it. Other than that, I'm going to go through a bit of a slideshow, talk about some interesting things I think that are important to know about building your drum section. And then we'll see how everybody thinks about that at the end. Let's get started here. I'm going to share my screen. See if this works okay. Everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Cool. Sorry, Zoom just changed their format a little bit. Let me just, 1 second here. There we go. Now I got you guys. All right, getting my drum corps performance ready way before the pipers. We do have a couple benefits to being drummers rather than pipers, and we'll talk about those as we go through here. How can we do it faster? Let's talk about this. First of all, what does it mean to build a drum corps, right? Building one means you're going to train your own people, recruit your own people. You're not trying to just get at your own drum section from a bunch of people who already play. Rarely does that happen. You're not going to get an entire drum section of people who already know how to play to come into your band. If you're a lead drummer and you're trying to get new people, and you're going to have to work with new people, we're going to build it ourselves, okay? Now, I use a lot of analogies. I'll try to minimize it, but my favorite ones is building a house. If you're going to build a house first, you have to pour the concrete, build the foundation, and then build your frame. You have to start from that, right? If you just start by hanging up artwork and painting the room, it doesn't work so well. Some people try to say, well, I know we have a big performance coming up, so I'm going to paraphrase, I'm just going to teach them the music. Well, very quickly you'll discover, even if it looks pretty at first, the first stiff wind that comes by, if there's no foundation and there's no frame, your house gets knocked over. So you want to avoid that for long-term goals, right? Excuse me. Okay, another analogy, I'll minimize these. Learn your alphabet before you enroll into an advanced literature class. I'm not going to be reading Shakespeare before I know the ABCs. You're going to sing the ABC song, you're going to learn what the sounds are, b, k, and you're going to do that over and over again. You're going to learn how to form little words, little sentences, and over time, you'll build up the skills to be able to participate in an advanced literature class, read Shakespeare, and whatever else like that. You have to take that approach where it doesn't work long term. I could tell a little kid a bunch of words and they could repeat it back to me, but doesn't mean they're actually reading and understanding and doing what we want in a long-term class, okay? Okay, so some examples of this. And this is not an all-inclusive list, but these are things everybody should know how to do before you try to teach them drum scores. Do they know how to hold their sticks properly? How do I even hit the drum? Sounds easy, right? Just hit the drum. It is not easy, especially that left hand. Sometimes people have a difficult time with their left hand. You have to develop that. How to read basic rhythms and other notation. What are these little squiggles and dots and dashes on the page? What do they mean? Maybe we have a little discussion about that before you just try to put them out there and have a performance or a parade or a competition or whatever, fill in the blank performance here, right? And of course, you have to know a few rudiments. You can't read a sentence unless you know some words. You have to know what the words are individually before the sentence makes sense. But people try to teach them just a drum score without knowing the components. These are super important to long-term building of your drum section, okay, of your drum corps. Now, here's something that a lot of people don't always realize. They get a hold of these drum scores. Maybe it was written for your band a long time ago. Your old drum section was there. Somebody wrote it for you. Your old drum sergeant, you had an instructor write it for you, whatever. It was written for a different group of people. Every drum score is written for the specific people in the band that year or at that moment, right? Over time, you might have to evaluate the appropriateness of it, right? So maybe you got a hold of a thing on the internet, right? Type in, I need a drum score for blah, blah, blah tune. You find one written by a famous Joe the drummer somewhere with a cool accent. Awesome. So he writes it, but he didn't write it for you. He wrote it for whoever he was writing it for, maybe for himself, maybe for his band, maybe for one of his students, but it wasn't for you. You have to remember these drum scores are not dogma. You're not going to be insulting anybody by not using them or not fully using them, which is what we're going to get into. Is it making sense so far? We're trying to get all of our heads in the right space right now. You don't want to just dive in and just do everything because you saw somebody on the internet do it. There's a lot more steps that build up to it, right? Okay, and I use the flam as an example, but when you're playing this hypothetical drum score by a famous drummer, they have a bunch of flams in it. Maybe that's difficult for you. Maybe that's difficult for one of your players. Maybe that's difficult to sound good as a band. Is one note, one grace note, that important to try to cram in there, even we know the band is not going to sound good playing it? I don't think so. It's one grace note. Another thing we have going for us, have to remember this, is nobody in the audience, whether they're a judge, whether they're your grandma at Aunt Gertrude's barbecue, whether you are playing a parade, whether you're playing at the Grand Poobah CEO's President's Dinner, nobody knows what you were supposed to play. They only know what you played, whether it was good or not, right? Our goal is to play good music. More notes, more grace notes does not make better music, right? Being able to play it well makes better music. So maybe the flam does sound good. Great, leave it in. If it doesn't sound good, we have to talk about what our options are. Now, here's another thing that a lot of people don't realize. It's not an all or nothing situation, right? So let's a couple scenarios here. Maybe it just sounds bad and the whole band, the whole drum section doesn't sound good. I use this flam as an example, but it could be anything. Could be a roll, could be a rhythm, could be a technique, could be whatever, some combination. I'm just going to stick with the flam for a minute here. It's not an all or nothing thing. Maybe we take out this one, but not that one. Maybe, and here's a good point too, is maybe one person leaves out one flam. If you have 5 drummers and one person misses one flam, who cares? No, don't show it off. Don't like a big old whack. Look, I'm not playing a flam. But maybe leave off one grace note. Who cares? Here's one of the, okay, now you guys are going to be in the club. You're going to know the secret. You know what the secret is for most grade 1 bands? Ready for this? They don't go in public with things they can't do yet. They all have something they can't do. I'm talking pipers, drummers, everybody has something they can't do. You have to have the mindset, I'm not going to show the public what I can't do. Now, it doesn't mean you're not working on stuff. Don't reverse that. You're going to go into your practice room and you're going to work on that thing, whatever it is, so you can eventually do it. But for today, what do I sound good doing? What do I not sound good doing? I'm not going to show you what I can't do. I'm not going to show you what I'm still working on. I mean, even if it's not a pipe band, think you're at some cover band in some dive bar somewhere. They're out there singing the song. If they don't know the lyrics, maybe they shouldn't be singing that song yet. They'll eventually, it's a good song though. It's a challenging song. I'm going to get that song. Cool. In your garage, go practice singing the song. If I'm paying an extra cover to get into this establishment to listen to you, I want to hear all the words. I'd rather hear Louie Louie done really, really well than Inagana-Davida all messed up, right? Stairway to Heaven all messed up is no good. Tequila by itself, awesome, right? Think of it that way. Go in public with what you can do. Challenge yourself in the practice room, and when you have it, then you put it out there, right? So what I mean it's not all or nothing is some individuals temporarily might leave out that flam. Maybe temporarily the entire drum section leaves out that flam, but you put it back in when you're ready. So it might be one measure. It might need to rewrite the entire line, the entire part, the entire drum score, but usually you don't. You have to make a couple small adaptations, and you have to have the mindset, the humility to be okay doing that. That's a huge part of it. Now, this is difficult for people coming from other styles of drumming. For example, if you ever played in DCI or American Rudimental, A lot of the competitions there have multiple categories. And one of the categories, besides, execution, is difficulty. The best one I ever saw was called exposure to error. So if you have like a high execution score but a low difficulty score, there's really nowhere to go, right? We don't have that category. We only have the execution category, essentially. There's no difficulty category specifically. And by the way, this is true whether you're competing or performing or whatever. In grade 1, if you're competing, there's nothing specifically required in your difficulty. They change stuff all the time to play well. They'll take out that flam, take out that whatever. Sometimes it means adding a flam or adding a note. It doesn't matter. It's about whatever you have to do to sound good. And you have the humility and the ego in check, if you will, to let that happen. You're not going to get knocked down because you played only 3 flams instead of 10, or you didn't play any Swiss roughs or whatever. You either played it well or you didn't. In fact, my first year in a grade 1 band, we didn't play any Swiss roughs because we could individually play them, but we didn't play them well as a group. However, we worked on them. The next 6 years in a row, our roughs were amazing, but we worked on them. And we also won lots of awards. Nobody said, hey, I think you used to play a flam there, or you used to play a rough there. They never say that. You know that in the back of your head, but don't tell anybody. I won't tell them. If you let me know, I promise not to spread your secret around. Okay, so what we're going to talk about here now, that's all great to have this philosophy of this in theory. What exactly do we do to make this happen? Let's get to some nitty gritty here. So here at the dojo, we have a thing called the phase process where we simplify the tunes. And now it's also to make it easier to play. I think even more importantly, you break it down for comprehension. Some of the more advanced players who have done this have gone through and said, hey, actually, after going through your process, I understand the drum score better. I've actually memorized it better. I understand how everything works together and how it relates to the pipe music better. So if you break things down, it's funny, if you break it down to help somebody who's maybe not doing as well, it's funny how you understand it better. I went through a process like that where I was helping my first ever student, and I was breaking down, for example, a 5-stroke roll. I just kind of played it real quick for them, like, right? They're like, what in the world did you just do? I was like, fair point. So I kind of broke it down until we eventually played some good 5-stroke rolls, again, for example. Well, I did that with all the various rudiments, all the various rhythms, all the various techniques. The next time, and I think at this point in my life, I was in a grade 2 soloist, and my next performance, I actually understood my music better because I had helped them break down their rudiments. I didn't try harder stuff. I did my simple stuff better and more definitively. Next thing you know, the first thing I noticed was how much slower it felt at full tempo because I understood everything so well. It wasn't that frantic moment because I understood everything so much better. I was able to relax and think about how I was playing it, where I was going to go loud, where I was going to go quiet, where I was smoothing it out, where I was being very aggressive, when I was laying back. All those fluffy words, but I was actually, all the execution stuff was locked in, and it was mostly because I've been helping people learn their basics way better. So we kind of go through that stuff with you here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is to show you a few examples of how to do this. Now obviously I have the entire line broken down, but again, it's not an all or nothing thing. So as you're looking over here, maybe you understand measure 1, but you don't understand measure 2. So maybe we have to break down measure 2, but not measure 1, or whatever, right? So just keep that in mind. So what I have here is the very bottom line is what we would consider like the phase 5 version of the full score. So all the stuff, the flams, the rolls, the accents, the whatever. So what we do is actually have a process of going back through and removing some stuff systematically and then adding it back in when you're ready. So if I, let's just start at the very beginning. Very beginning, this is what we would consider like a phase 1. It's just basic rhythms, right? If you understand your basic rhythms, that's the pouring the foundation, that's pouring the concrete, building the frame. So we have, by the way, I'm taking, taking some liberties here, assuming that people have already done some basic rhythm training or whatever. So if something's a little bit over your head, you feel free to ask a question, but I'm going to go through this bit by bit. And I'm going to, again, make some assumptions. But if I go too fast, again, I'm watching the chat. Feel free to ask some questions. So if I just look at these eighth notes here, 1 and we have some swing, 2 and a 1 and 2 and, right? Well, what am I doing down here? I'm this roll from here to here and this roll from here to here. All I'm showing you is where the roll starts and where the roll ends. Okay. Now, if I look at this measure down here, this level 2, I'm showing you the breakdown of this roll, right? I am showing you the breakdown of this roll, and we're adding the triplet back in here. So you're going to see the basic rhythm of a roll, and then 2 triplets together. And then we go through here, and when you're ready, you add in some buzzes on that. But to say you've already locked in that rhythm, like and triplet, 2 triplet, and you add some buzzes. But you already know the rhythm. And then you look here and you say, oh, that's a roll. That's the abbreviation for a roll. The trouble is, most people, if they don't go through this process, see that and think they have to go really, really fast and really, really hard and see how many notes they can cram in there. Actually, you don't, right? This process will show you that the rolls aren't as difficult as you think. You're not going as fast as you think, right? You're not going as fast as you think. So when you actually play good quality buzzes, they overlap with each other at a slower tempo. See what I mean? I didn't actually go very fast there, but I kept expanding my buzzes and it looked like I was going faster. You see how that can be confusing if you don't know what I'm doing? But I'm just going. So the more we do this, the more you understand how these are broken down. And reading the abbreviations is a lot easier in the long run. There's way less clutter on the page. What else do we add in? We add in accents. So here we have an accent, which means you play louder. And by the way, music without accents will be extremely boring. Let me just give you a dumb example, not on the page here. If I'm just playing this, you're bored already. Nobody cares, right? Boring. Move on. Come on. I didn't get faster. I didn't get slower. I didn't add more notes. All I did was get some louder and some quieter. All of a sudden, it was way more interesting, right? So when we learn how to do that properly, you make your music way more interesting. So we actually focus on the quiet notes, make it easier, and bring the loud notes out. However, sometimes, again, this process, some accents are more challenging. So maybe if you're not quite ready, again, this isn't an all or nothing thing. You could read the abbreviation and understand how to do the roll, but that accent is too difficult for you. If one person leaves out one accent, really, who cares? Now, if a whole bunch of people can't do it, maybe just all leave it out. Might be more interesting, but you don't want it to be sloppy. You don't want it to be out of control. Sometimes when people go for accents, they go faster, accidentally. So if you're not ready for it, leave it out. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna play through each of these phases. Now you can see up here, every single thing in the phase 2 and below is not in phase 1. It's meant to be simplified on purpose, just to get the basic structure. Then we add on to it, right? So I'm actually gonna put my metronome on here, and I wanna see if you can watch this process build and see if it makes more sense to you. There we go. I'll go a little faster than that. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to play, I talk you through measure 1. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to play through the bottom line first and see how much sense it makes. Ready? Go. Try that again. Ready, and go. Okay, so there's a lot going on there. We have flams, we have rolls, we have accents. Now, so what I'm going to do is work my way down. I'm going to play the phase 1, and then 2, and then 3. You can kind of see how it builds, okay? Here's number 1. Ready, and go. Right, now I'll add in some more of the rhythms, some of the triplets. Ready, go. Now add in some buzzes. Level 3, ready, and go. Now, when I go to 4, you're going to notice the rolls are pretty much the same, but now we add some accents. Ready, and go. And then level 5, add some flams, a little more density here. Ready, and go. Now, even if you could play level 5 from the get-go, how much better did you understand it? Because we did 1, 2, 3, 4 first. Got the foundation built. And you're probably thinking either yourself or somebody you know who would have a difficult time with parts of it. So now we have a game plan for what to do with them at those specific spots. And let me just say, there's a whole bunch of ways to do this correctly. Right? This is just the way I've done it on this specific one here. You could simplify things a whole bunch of different ways. Okay. Any questions so far? Is it making sense? A little bit more specific there. Okay. So now I'm going to do one that's a little bit more complex, but I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to play phase 5 here. A little bit more stuff going on. But we do have a drag this time. I'm not going to a whole big drag lesson, but it's a little bit different as opposed to flam. We have the flams, we have the rolls, we have the triplets, we have accented rolls now. If this confuses you, by the way, we actually have this all the time. We have a little bit of a Rosetta Stone here. Say, hey, what does this abbreviation mean? Look up one line. There it is. If that confuses you, look up one line. There it is, right? Just as a brief overview, if you see an accent above a roll, that means to do a single tap there instead of a buzz, right? So up here, all I do is leave only the taps in and I remove the buzzes or where the buzzes would be. And then we fill them in and then we add the buzzes. Okay, so let me do it the same way again. I'm going to play phase 5 here. And ready, and go. So maybe that's a little bit confusing. There's a little bit more going on, right? Take a step back. So phase 1, ready, and go. Now, I know for some of you, the 30-second notes here might be a little confusing. That's something else we might simplify, but we're leaving it in for the moment. But you can see how all the other stuff has been taken out and the basic structure of the rhythm is still there. Let's fill it in a bit. So all those little open spaces where I had for the 8th notes are now going to get filled in with triplets. Ready, and go. Right, so even if that was confusing, you could always play, like if you played phase 1 while I played phase 2, we would still match up all the time, I would just have a few extra notes from you, right? So like if you couldn't play this triplet into the 32nd notes, well, you could play just this 1/8 note, let me play the triplet, and then play all the 32nd notes. Again, that's an example of how to simplify something for somebody for one measure or for the whole group. Same basic idea. Phase 3, add some buzzes. Ready, and go. Now phase 4, add some accents and read the abbreviations. Ready, and go. And then phase 5, add some flams and some drags. Of course, we're expecting a higher level of quality of play at this point too. Ready, and go. Okay, now, did that make more and more sense because we went through the process? I saw some of you as I was doing it, like nodding, like I saw some eyes actually getting wider, like, oh, that's what it was. That's the whole point here, right? You're going to understand it better. Doesn't mean you can play it immediately, but that's the idea. You understand it better. And to be fair, I think it's more fun to know what you're doing. It's a little much more fun. How many people have gone through this thing where you guess and nobody yells at you? So you go, whew, that's stressful. I don't like that. I want to know that I did it right. I want to practice and understand. So when I play it and I know I did it right, there's no question whether somebody's going to yell at me or not. They shouldn't be yelling at you anyway. It's okay. Any questions on this so far? I love it. It's a perfect presentation. No questions. Okay. All right, let's take a look at it. We can do this in any time signature, by the way. Here's a 6/8. This is actually a jig. Okay. Every single type of tune, march, strathspey, reel, hornpipe, jig, slow air, anything you could do this process on. But here's an example of a jig. So down here we have just our 1/8 notes, flams, we have our roll here. If that roll is confusing to you, look up one level, right? You can see the breakdown of it. And here you would see where the roll starts and where the roll ends. We fill it in, we subdivide it. And so this one's a bit simpler than the last one, but it's in 6/8. It's a jig, so people freak out and get scared. Let's just show you that's not a big deal, right? Excuse me. So we'll try this here. These are 1/8 notes, right? So I'm gonna play phase 5 first. You hear the whole thing, and then we're gonna work our way through it. Obviously, I'm going quickly through it today. In real life, you might have to like go slower in one section for somebody. Maybe take a week or so on each phase. I get it, but we're just kind of giving you the idea today. Here's phase 5. Ready? Go. Okay, now phase 1. Ready? Go. Easy rhythms. Now it's all easy, I think, except for some of you will be for this bit right here, right? Well, you saw extra ink, more notes. You must have to go really fast there, right? No, the idea is you relax and realize that it's not that fast. These are 16th notes. They go twice as fast as these right here, okay? Now, let's do phase 2. All we're doing is adding a couple extra notes right here and right here. And sticking gets more precise. Ready? Go. So I just went a little faster here and double timed it. Now phase 3, add some buzzes on those spots where you go faster. Ready? Go. Less scary. Now phase 4, read the 2 roll abbreviations plus 2 accents. Ready? Go. Now add the flams and the drag. Ready? Go. So again, as I went through it, did that make more and more and more sense? Plus, you've done those rhythms enough times now. You start, have you ever seen somebody who's really good at sight reading music? You know why they're good at it? Because they've seen it before. That's the big secret. Like once you've seen these rhythms before, next time it shows up, do the same thing, right? It's called having experience, which is not cheating. I've seen it before. It's not cheating. It's what's supposed to happen, right? All right. Now, so this one's a little bit more complicated, but the same time signature. So we're going to add this in. I'm actually going to change my metronome setting here. So now my metronome is playing 1/4/8. Let the car go by. There it is. So, right, so that's the same rhythm as measure 1 at the top. So let me play again. Bottom line first. Ready? Go. Right. By the way, these rhythms here, these 7-stroke rolls, these are some people's nemesis. So we practice them a lot. So after you've seen it a few times, you've done it before, it's no longer a big deal. So if that's confusing, see where the roll starts and stops, which by the way is what I'm establishing with the way that I've set up the metronome here. So let's do line 1. Ready? Go. Second line. Ready? Go. Here's your fun rhythm. So while I'm not doing a big lesson on it, when you have this rhythm here, this 8th note triplet, this note here starts on the first click, and this 4th note here is on the second click. And there's 4 evenly spaced notes. Don't go or whatever. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now let's do the same thing, add some buzzes in. Ready? Go. Now let's read the abbreviations. Don't freak out because it's a roll. Now I'm going to play a good roll, so I'm going to do all sorts of made up stuff. Same as the previous line. Here we go, 4th line. Ready? Go. Now the last line. Ready? Go. So you're starting to see how I can apply this in any time signature at any difficulty level. You just take it to where it helps people understand it better, to help them play it better, short term or long term. Any questions on how the general process works? Again, you have to apply it to your specific needs, your specific drum score, your specific player's ability and experience level and whatnot. Okay, when do we use this process? Is it one person, the whole core, just one bar, the whole score? Use the Jurassic Park rule. This is how you figure this out. Could we do it? Yes. Should we? Depends on a whole bunch of things, right? That's the Jurassic Park rule. Could we do it? Yes, absolutely. Should we? Maybe. It depends on a whole bunch of stuff. I like to give I think some people here have heard the story, but it's a great one. I'll tell it anyway. I actually played a funeral. I was playing with a couple pipers. Drummers don't play many funerals. So I was interested. They specifically requested me to come play drums at it. So I went to the funeral, and the funeral director was showing us where he wants us to stand at which parts of the thing. He goes, okay, when we get here, pipers, I want you to play Amazing Grace. And when you get to the end of the tune, I want you to hold your last note. And he looks at me, I need you to go into like 30 or 40 seconds of the best drum salute fanfare you've got. I was like, I'm at a funeral, right? What? And if I asked you and said, hey, should you play your best fancy drum salute at a funeral? Most of you would have said no. However, I'm back to here. I'm like, am I being punked? What's going on here? What happened? So basically, the gentleman, the deceased gentleman, was a former high school band director. He was on his second career, but he was definitely in his field of friends and his group of friends and family. He was known as the drummer in the group. So we get the end of Amazing Grace. I was just like, I cannot believe I'm doing this. Anyway, so I played 30, 40 seconds of backsticking, flip and fancy accents and loud and soft and all these things. And the place went absolutely berserk in a good way, right? They're crying in a good way. And then I went back into a roll, and they went back into Amazing Grace one more time. I'm like, okay, that solidified this rule. Yeah, this solidified that rule in my head. In certain situations, yes. In certain situations, no. It depends. And I wish I could give you a black and white answer. You always do it here and never here. You have to consider the totality. Again, what event are you playing for? What's the purpose of this, right? What players do you have? How experienced are they? And be honest with yourself. How much experience and talent and ability do I have? Is it something that we can go and do this particular event justice, right? Doesn't matter. Again, I put all events in similar categories. I don't care if you're competing, playing it, Aunt Gertrude's Backyard Barbecue. I don't care if you're playing at a local dive bar, St. Patrick's Day, World Pipe Band Championships, local volunteer firefighters parade, all the same to me. I'm in public and I want to sound good the best I can. So you have to consider all of these things, right? So let's get your mind working on it depends. Now, a real one also happened to me where I said no. I was a high school band director, and I liked when the kids gave me suggestions for the halftime, the marching band show. This is a real one. The kids were like, hey, can we put garbage cans over our heads and hit each other with baseball bats? And then my first instinct was no, but I didn't say it. I said, we could, but should we? It depends on, maybe there's an aspect of their artistic creativity that I'm missing. They're just like, we thought it'd be really cool. I'm like, no. I'm assuming every idea you have, you think is really cool. We're just gonna take it's cool off the table as a reason, right? If I have this idea, I think it's cool. If you have an idea, you think it's cool. Anyway, so I want you, again, this is about mindset. How do you think about things? And that's how you make these decisions, right? Okay. Now, here's another subject. We kind of touched on this, but I want to go into a little bit more detail. Crossover drummers. This is what I call people who have played another style of drumming, any kind, and then they wanted to play in a pipe band, versus teaching from scratch. There's pros and cons to this, right? So if you're a crossover drummer, people think, oh, cool, this person already knows how to play drums. Cool, we have a drummer now. Slow your roll, literally. Remember I said earlier, rolls are slow. Sorry, I got bad jokes all the time. Crossover. Old habits are difficult to break and or change. In certain styles of drumming, there are different, for lack of a better word, rules that people are just ingrained in their head as dogma, as this is how drumming is done. And then I come along and I say, no, actually, I need you to do this instead. And like, what? You can't do that. So again, it's the whole mindset thing. Can they? Maybe. But old habits are difficult. However, pro is there's lots of transferable skills. Absolutely. 100%. You don't have to change 100% of everything. I like to think of it as having a tool belt, right? I use a screwdriver for this one, and I use a wrench for this one, right? The screwdriver is still a good tool, but when I switch to another job, I have to switch to my wrench. Two perfectly good sets of tools, two perfectly good skill sets, but you have to use one here and one here. It depends on how your mind works. So totally possible, take somebody who's played other styles of drumming and get them to play, but there are some new things to learn. But the chances are they already know how to read music. They understand basically how to play together with other people because they've played in other bands before. So you have that whole ensemble thing kind of built in. Drummers from scratch, cons. Feels like it takes forever, doesn't it? Get them going. There's somebody who's never seen a drumstick before, just holds it and looks at you and smiles, right? Like, how do I make this thing dance? Like, what happens? You can train them, but it takes a while. You have to be patient to do it. So the con is you feel like it takes too long. I don't have time for this. I want to just have a drum section. Well, somebody has to train them, right? And you're not going to go to a local, by the way, quit going to local high schools and ask them for their drummers. They spent years since the kids were like 9 or 10 training them until they're in high school. Say, oh, cool. Now that you've trained them, can I have them? Of course not. Train years. But the pros they already learned their skills properly from day one. When they are ready, they're in your band. They already know how to play. And that's how you get more like long-term band members. That's how, especially with kids, you become like their thing if you get them early enough. Now, obviously you're competing with football and scouts and this and that and the other thing. I get it. But if you get them early enough, they become your thing. And you're their teacher. You're not somebody who showed them something along the way. You're the teacher, or I'm the teacher, or whoever, right? If you get it from proper skills from day one, they're doing well, and you have them long term. So, having said that, what are your goals? Short term or long term? Do you want people to show up and just play the local parade really quick? You can do that. By the way, just on the side, there's no real accomplishment there unless your goal was to save up money for a kilt and a drum. But I got news for you. The kilt manufacturers, the drum manufacturers, they'll sell you all the stuff that you can afford. Right? There's no test to get those, right? So getting somebody in the band specifically to me is not a goal. It's the outcome of the goal. If they're playing well and they can play wherever they want, it's their skills now, they can do what they want with it. If you train them, they're going to want to play in your band. So again, are your terms goals long-term or short-term? You need a player for this one time or they're going to leave the band? Fair enough. If you need them for long-term, consider how you're training them and talking to them and getting the mindset, right? Because remember, how you build your band is like whatever type of people you have is who you're going to attract. If you have hardworking people who are always striving for excellence, who are always practicing really hard, you're going to attract like-minded people. If you have people who show up and just want to have a party and go bowling and throw darts and just screw around, you're going to attract people who just want to screw around and go bowling and play darts. By the way, go bowling and play darts. That's your business. I don't care, but I don't need it at band practice, right? I have plenty of friends that I will go bowling with that won't come to my band practice, right? Nothing wrong with that. But you have to consider, what are my goals? What am I trying to accomplish here? Do I want a band for a long time? Or do I want to just get somebody out short-term to help me before I do my other thing? Okay. So like I said, you want people who will work hard and practice, whether they're crossover drummers or from scratch. You want people who are willing to learn. You want people with a good attitude. I guess if you have a good attitude, the other two kind of come naturally, right? But you want to make sure that they're willing to work hard with you, have fun with you, the whole aspect, willing to learn, have a good attitude. And if people don't have a good attitude, I've learned just to tell them to not come. You want people who want to be there and want to create a positive atmosphere. Okay, so that's the basics of what I wanted to kind of go over today. This is where I want to kind of open it up to Q&A. Is there anything, to be fair, I could sit here and talk about drumming all day, every day with never stopping. That's just me. And no matter how long I talk, there's always be something I didn't cover. This is definitely not an all-inclusive list of things to do and think about and talk about. But is there anything that you wanted to ask about? Something maybe you had in your mind you wanted to learn about here that I did not cover? This would be a great time to bring it up. And Todd, I appreciate that you capitalized best on best band director ever in the chat there. I do appreciate that. Best funeral ever. Yes, because I was there. Capital best. No typos. I love it. Okay, here we go. We got some people. What are some of the fundamental differences between Scottish and other drumming styles? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see me better. Okay, so some fundamental differences are, I would say, let's just start with the roll technique. If you're playing, like for example, American rudimental drumming, right? One of the things that people do is they use their wrist for some things I don't want them to use their wrist for here. Like they would crush into the roll by whipping their hand down like that. Okay, whereas I want them to just set it down gently and let it vibrate. So what ends up happening is the rolls in American rudimental drumming do two different things. First of all, they're more open usually, whereas we use our arms more and let the stick vibrate on the drum. I might, in a pipe band drumming, as just doing regular taps, I would loosen my hand a lot and let the stick vibrate and resonate more, a little bit more rebound, whereas they would hold it tighter and stop it dead. So the same rhythm. So slight style difference there, but you kind of heard the pitch change on my drum pad, right? Obviously, I didn't just tune my drum pad. So some very basic things would be versus some rhythm rolls versus, and also like you saw my arms going up and down. Some of these guys are told to never ever move your arms. It has to stay perfectly still. Everything is here, and they practice even on a pillow doing, which I've done too. Practice the pillow doing a really soft surface, doing with your wrists. And we also the pipe band we use more fingers. Like I use my thumb to move the stick, whereas they would actually connect their thumb and finger and use all wrist and stop it. So there's a few little things like that that do tend to add up. Okay. Does that answer your question, Danny? Excellent. Okay. Good. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. Oh, Jennifer's got to run, but she liked it. Cool. I thought it was a question. Adam, recording. I'm not sure where it's going to be available, but it will be available. Yes. So you can refer back to this later for sure. Okay. Any other questions? Let me. Okay, so one more thing, since if you have anything else, you can feel free to pop it in there. I'll answer it. But if you enjoy having conversations like this with me on a regular basis, some of you guys are already in my drum class, right? Some of you guys are already in my class, and we have conversations. Some of you I know are recognizing some of the things I've said today because we've had these conversations. If you've already, but you're not in my class and you've enjoyed this, you are definitely welcome to sign up. I would love to have you in class on a regular basis, and we talk about all these things, but we break down like into small details, and we'll get to like talk about one thing in great detail during the class time. Okay. This is the link. Before you go though, I will drop the link in the chat, so don't go anywhere quite yet. I need to grab it. And then if you've not already signed up, there's a code here. When you're signing up, try free 7. That'll give you 7 days to just check out the site and see what's there, see if you like it, ask a bunch of questions, dig deep into it for a week before you fully commit. And I will drop it into the box. Oh, we have some more questions coming in. Nice. We have recruiting new drummers. That's a whole. Honestly, that would be an entirely different webinar. This whole recruiting is difficult. The best advice I've ever received on it is like kind of build it and they will come. Like success breeds success. If you go in public anywhere, pick a spot, doesn't matter. You go in public and you sound good, people will want to play with you. If people see that you with a good quality, this is what I was talking about earlier, you'll attract people who are like-minded. If you see somebody who's out there just acting the fool and not playing well, but they don't care because they get to throw darts and drink beer and whatever, that's who you're going to attract, right? Cool, but not my thing. If you go out in public and you sound good and you look good and you present yourself well, that is the best way ever. I mean, you could, I don't know, obviously people put out social media posts, people do all sorts of stuff. Don't go to schools. They're not going to want to talk to you. But that's my best advice for that. Adam, you're very welcome. Thank you. Mary, what are your thoughts about having? Oh my goodness, Mary, fantastic question. Yes, 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 and 100 times yes. Um, Here's the thing: the bass and tenors. What's the problem with people who say, "I want to learn bass"? A lot of times they're told, "Well, it's easy because you don't have to do all that snare stuff. You just have to play one note, right?" Well, okay, you're supposed to match the snares though. And if you're not sure, it sounds like a bunch of white noise. They're like 10,000 notes. And which one of their 10,000, I have to play 4 notes during their 10,000? Which ones do I match up with? And the answer is you have to study music. You know, even if you're not a perfect snare drummer, you understand basically what's going on around you. It's a lot easier to match it. Like if you aren't perfect, but you understand that, hey, the snare drums are playing a 7-stroke roll, and I want you to hit a big accent at the end of their 7-stroke roll on beat number 3. That's a good conversation. You can even watch the snare drummer's hands and go boom on time with it, right? So I mean that's just one example. So most the best bass drummers I know have at least some cursory knowledge of the snare drum. Yes, and same with tenors, absolutely, because same thing. You have all the time to wait in between. Well, how do you follow along? It's just like right, and then you have to go boom at the end of what seems like just like white noise. So please, if at all possible, do that. Okay, so good, more questions. I like this. Jumping off Danny's question, is it easier for someone who has never played before, to go from Scottish to American or vice versa? Interested in both. A piper. I haven't made the switch totally yet, right? Nice. Um, I would. So I'm interesting because I actually started doing pipe band style first and then learned American. But I know more people that learn American and then go to pipe band style. Honestly, I've known people that were very successful at both, and I've known people who were very unsuccessful at both. And it has everything to do with attitude. If you're able to humble yourself and be willing to be the beginner again, it makes all the difference in the world. I don't know if it's, in my case, I didn't have a really difficult time switching, but I was also in a mental place to do it. I actually, so to be fair, I would say going from Scottish to American would be a little bit easier, but nothing significant. It just all depends on you. Todd. All right. How much time in practice is good to play with the pipers? Honestly, it's not about how much time; it's how frequent. Play along with them daily. Play that, 5-10 minutes a day, every day, rather than just sitting there for 2 hours playing along and consider it practice. Right. The biggest thing about practice in general, for no matter what, be fair. Let's just talk about learning in general. Whatever skill you're trying to learn, do it frequently. Not for a long time, but just for short little bursts, frequently over a period of time. That could be over weeks, months, years, just doing on a regular basis. So yeah, if you want to get an amount, I would say 5-10 minutes a day, be fine. No worries at all. And again, you have to listen to the pipe tunes a lot, because if you're not used to playing with bagpipes, people are like, well, how do I know where the part starts and stops? Well, you study, you learn the tune structures, you learn the rhythms, you learn what they're doing, you learn what you're doing, and you learn how they match up with each other. Okay, those are some good questions. I like this. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to drop this link in here right now. Another question. Thoughts on playing along with pipe tunes from YouTube? Oh, I love it. Yeah. YouTube's a great resource. I use it all the time. Obviously, there's no, how to say this nicely. You never know what you're going to get, but that's actually more realistic, isn't it? That's more realistic. Pipers on YouTube, some of them are excellent. You can find some amazing professional pipers. You also find some amateurs who are just putting it out for fun, and their tempo is a little bit erratic. Guess what? That's the way it is in real life. So I've learned to adapt on a regular basis, to slow down or speed up or make small adaptations along the way. I even play a game called Radio Roulette, where I play whatever drum score or rudiment sheet or exercise I'm on, just along with the radio. Sorry, fire station down the street. Anyway, so I turn on whatever classical pop, R&B, 50s, heavy metal, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. Swing. Play whatever you're playing along with it and adapt. So you just learn how to be adaptable. My big part of what I do is just making sure you're adaptable on a regular basis, right? You learn how to play on different surfaces. You learn how to play different tempos. You learn how to pay attention to what's going on around you and adapt to what's going on around you. That makes you a good, band member. But in real life, if we're playing together, what I do affects you, what you do affects me. We both adapt. But the guy in the YouTube, he's super stubborn. He doesn't adapt for anybody. He does super steady, right? And next thing you know, you have to make the adaptations. So you learn how to be adaptable like that. Add any site to download and purchase snare music. I don't have one. The biggest thing I say is kind of like what I was talking about at the very beginning, is the drum scores typically are written to a specific person or group. So the best thing you can do is get somebody to help you if you're looking for drum scores, is to talk to them about your specific strengths and weaknesses and have something custom made for you. There are some I can't think of off the top of my head, but again, they're just random drum scores that weren't written for you. So that's my concern with that, right? Some people get a hold of books and there's some great stuff, but they say, oh, I have to play it. This is the whole dogma thing I was talking about before. You think, well, because so-and-so, and he's really famous and he won a thing and a belt and a medal and a trophy and a sash, I must have to play it exactly the way he wrote. This is the magic thing. No, it's not. It's magic because he wrote it for somebody else, right? If you see my music written down, oh, this is for such and such band from whatever year, it was written for the people in the band that year. It's not necessarily the standard that wasn't, intended for that grade level or whatever. It was written for the people in the band that year. So I would caution you about that. But off the top of my head, I can't think of any good sites. But if I think of any, I can let you know. But either way, you'd have to make adaptations most likely, which is cool too. Cool, some good questions here. And if you didn't see in the chat, everybody, I put the link and the code. Okay. I'm getting here towards the end. This is any last minute questions for me. I think we talked about a lot of good stuff. Again, it's not an all-inclusive list. There's lots more to talk about. If you have anything that you need or want, please let me know. Going once. Do I see people typing? Are you typing? Oh, here we go. People are typing. I knew it. Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Appreciate you guys. Hope you had a good time. Hope you learned something. And I will talk to you all very soon. Have a good night or a good day. Bye.